The lies came first. Krell agents spread across the galaxy like poison in water. They whispered to the Therian ambassadors that the Valorans were planning to attack them. They told the Mach Tori that humans wanted to steal their Tori. They showed fake documents to the Galactic Concord that said the Human Valoran Alliance was building secret weapons. The lies were clever because they used truth as their foundation. Yes, the Alliance was growing stronger. Yes, human and Valoran ships were more powerful than ever. Yes, the two species talked about the future with confidence, but the lie twisted this truth into something ugly. The Alliance was not protecting anyone, the Krell whispered. It was preparing to conquer. Species that had been jealous of the Alliance for years believed what they wanted to believe. The Therians had always hated how the Valorans looked down on them. The Mach Tori had always resented human confidence. Others simply feared any power that was not their own. The Galactic Concord called an emergency meeting. The Krell presented their fake evidence. Documents that seemed real. Recordings that seemed authentic. Witnesses who had been bought or threatened into lying. Earth's ambassador, James Chun, stood before the council and begged them to see reason. "These documents are false," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "The Valorans have been our friends for 30 years. They have never threatened anyone. This is a Krell trick to divide us." The council did not listen. They voted to send a peacekeeping force to Valoran Prime. They said it was just to investigate. They said no one would be hurt. James Chan knew they were lying. He could see the hunger in the Krell ambassadors' compound eyes. He could see the guilty looks on Therian faces. He sent a desperate message to Earth. "It's a trap. Prepare for war." But it was already too late. The Krell Annihilation Armada jumped into Valoran space without warning. 600 capital ships, thousands of fighters. The largest fleet anyone had ever seen. They were not alone. Therian warships flew beside them. Mach Tori destroyers followed behind. The peacekeeping force was an invasion army. The attack came during the Festival of Ascension. This was the holiest day in Valoran culture. For 1 week, warriors put down their weapons. Families gathered to celebrate their ancestors. Children played in the streets while elders told stories. The Valoran Defense Fleet had only 90 ships on active duty. The rest were docked for maintenance. Their crews were home with their families. When the Krell fleet appeared in the sky, the Valorans looked up in confusion. Then the bombardment began. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was on patrol with the 7th Fleet when she received the distress call. Warlord Kethvorn's voice crackled through the speakers, broken by static and weapons fire. "Yuki, they came without warning. To Concord, they betrayed us. My world is burning." Tanaka felt her heart turn to ice. "Hold on, old friend. We're coming. All ships, maximum speed to Valoran Prime." Our 40 ships raced toward the Valoran homeworld. But before they could arrive, another fleet blocked their path. Concord ships. 200 of them. A Therian commander appeared on the view screen. His face was expressionless, but his eyes flickered with fear. "Admiral Tanaka, you are ordered to return to Earth. The Galactic Concord has authorized peacekeeping operations in Valoran space. Human interference will not be tolerated." "Peacekeeping?" Tanaka's voice was deadly quiet. "There are 600 Krell ships bombarding civilians. Children are dying. And you call this peacekeeping? Return to Earth, Admiral. This is your final warning." Tanaka looked at her tactical display. 200 ships against her 40. She was a warrior, but she was not stupid. If she attacked, her fleet would be destroyed. And then no one would be left to tell Earth what had happened. But she could not leave. Not while Kethvorn was fighting. Not while Valorans were dying. "I will not attack you," she said slowly. "But I will not leave. I will watch. I will record. And I will make sure the galaxy knows what you have done today." The Therian commander looked away. He could not meet her eyes. For 72 hours, Admiral Tanaka watched her allies die. She watched as Krell ships bombed cities that had stood for 10,000 years. She watched as ancient temples became craters. She watched as fleeing refugees were hunted down by Mok'Turi fighters. She watched as 8 billion Valorans were murdered. The communications channels were full of screaming. Valoran mothers calling for help that would never come. Valoran soldiers fighting to the last breath against impossible odds. Valoran children crying as the sky fell down around them. Tanaka recorded everything. Her crew wept at their stations, but they did not look away. They owed the Valorans that much. On the final day, one lost transmission came through. It was Warlord Kethvoran. His ship was breaking apart around him. Blue blood ran down his silver face, but his eyes still burned with fire. "Yuki, my sister." "I'm here," Tanaka whispered. Tears ran down her weathered cheeks. "I'm here, old friend. Remember us." Kethvoran's voice was fading. "Remember what they are. Remember what they did to us. And when you return," he coughed, and blue light flickered in his dying eyes. "Return with fire." The transmission ended. Valora Prime fell silent. The silver cities that had touched the clouds were now nothing but ash. Admiral Tanaka stood on her bridge for a long time, staring at the dead world that had once been home to her dearest friends. Then she turned to her crew. "Set course for Earth," she said. Her voice was calm now, cold, maximum speed. "Admiral," her first officer asked quietly, "what will we tell them? The truth." "We will tell them everything. And then," she looked back at the burning planet one last time, "then we will prepare." When the 7th Fleet reached Earth, Tanaka went straight to the United Parliament. She played her recordings for the entire world. Every death, every scream, every moment of the massacre, the human race watched in horrified silence. Then the silence became grief, and the grief became rage. President Amara Okonkwo stood before the Parliament. Her face was stone, but her eyes were fire. "The Galactic Concord has shown us what it truly is," she said. "They smiled at us while they planned murder. They spoke of peace while they prepared genocide. They killed our brothers and sisters while blocking our ships." She took a deep breath. "No more. We will not share the stars with monsters. We will not trade with traitors. From this moment forward, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Concord. Every human ship will return to Sol. Every human colony will be abandoned. We are going home." The galaxy thought humanity was running away. They thought humans were scared. Some species laughed at human weakness. They did not understand. Earth was not retreating. Earth was closing the door behind itself. And when that door opened again, the galaxy would learn what happens when you hurt those humanity loves. Admiral Tanaka returned to her quarters that night. She sat alone in the darkness, holding a small token that Kethvoran had given her years ago. A Valoran honor stone, carved with the symbol of eternal friendship. "I will return," she whispered to the empty room. "I will return with fire. I promise you, old friend. I promise." The borders of the Sol system closed, and humanity began to prepare. The year was 2247, and humanity had been sailing among the stars for almost 100 years. Earth had joined a group called the Galactic Concord. This was a large collection of 23 different alien species. They all lived and traded together in the part of space called the Orion Arm. Most of these aliens looked down on humans. They thought humans were too young, too primitive, and too short-lived to matter. They smiled at human ambassadors but laughed at them behind closed doors. To them, humanity was like a child trying to sit at a table of adults. But one species saw something different in humanity. They were called the Valorans. The Valorans were tall and proud. Their skin was the color of silver moonlight, and they had 4 strong arms. Their eyes glowed with soft blue light, like stars trapped in glass. They were warriors who also loved poetry. They were fighters who also loved wisdom. For thousands of years, they had been the greatest soldiers in the galaxy. When the Valorans first met humans, something unexpected happened. They saw themselves. The Valorans recognized the fire in human eyes. They saw how humans refused to bow, refused to accept their place at the bottom. They watched human soldiers train with a hunger that reminded them of their own ancient past. While other species called humans weak, the Valorans called them brothers. It began with small things. A Valoran commander invited a human captain to dinner. Valoran warriors offered to train with human soldiers. The Valoran poets started learning human languages so they could read Earth's great stories. Then came the Pact of Twin Flames. On a warm summer day on Earth, and under the three suns of Valoran Prime, both species signed a promise. They would stand together. They would fight together. They would protect each other against any enemy. The document was written in both languages, and leaders from both worlds pressed their hands against it. Admiral Yuki Tanaka of Earth's 7th Fleet was there that day. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought pirates and raiders for 30 years. She was hard as iron and twice as tough. But when Warlord Kethvorin of the Valoran Honor Guard clasped her hand, she smiled like a young girl. Kethvorin was everything a Valoran should be. He stood 8 feet tall. His silver skin was covered with scars from 100 battles. His forearms could crush stone, but his voice was gentle when he spoke of peace. He looked at Admiral Tanaka and saw not a small human woman. He saw a warrior whose spirit burned as bright as any Valoran. "Today we are allies," Kethvorin said in his deep, rumbling voice. "Tomorrow we will be family." He was right. In the years that followed, human and Valoran ships flew side by side. They patrolled the same borders. They chased the same pirates. They bled in the same battles. When Valoran soldiers fell, human medics rushed to save them. When human ships were damaged, Valoran engineers worked through the night to repair them. The two species began to share everything. The Valorans taught humans how to build better shields. Their technology could stop weapons that would have torn through human armor like paper. In return, humans shared their greatest secret, their artificial intelligence systems. Human computers could think faster than any organic brain. Together, these technologies made their combined fleet nearly unstoppable. But it was not just military power that grew. The cultures began to blend. Human children grew up hearing Valoran legends. They learned about the great Valoran heroes who had fought monsters in the dark between stars. They learned about Valoran honor, about keeping promises even when it cost everything. Valoran bedtime stories became as common as fairy tales on Earth. On Valoran Prime, young Valorans studied human history with amazement. They read about World War II, about small groups of humans fighting against impossible odds. They learned about the moon landing, about humans reaching for the sky simply because it was there. They studied human art and music and fell in love with it all. Marriages began to happen. Not between humans and Valorans, for they were too different for that. But human families adopted Valoran traditions. Valoran families celebrated human holidays. The boundaries between them grew thin and then disappeared entirely. 30 years passed this way. 30 years of friendship. 30 years of trust. Admiral Tanaka grew old, but she never retired. She said she would die on the bridge of her ship, and everyone believed her. Warlord Kethvorin's scales began to lose their shine, but his strength never faded. The two of them still met every month to share drinks and stories. "The galaxy does not understand us," Tanaka said one night. Looking out at the stars from her ship's observation deck, Kethvorin stood beside her, two of his arms clasped behind his back. "They fear us. Two warrior peoples, united. We could conquer everything if we wished. But we don't wish that. No, the warlord agreed. "We wish only to protect what we love. That is what makes us strong. That is what they will never understand." But someone was watching. Someone was afraid that far away, in a dark region of space, an empire of insects observed the human Valoran alliance with cold hatred. They called themselves the Krell hegemony. They believed they were the supreme species in the galaxy. They believed all other life existed only to serve them or die. The Krell had been expanding for centuries. They conquered world after world. They enslaved billions. They crushed anyone who resisted. They had planned to eventually sweep through the Orion Arm and take everything. But now there was a problem. The humans and Valorans together were too strong. Their combined fleet could stop the Krell advance. Their friendship inspired other species to resist. Every year the alliance grew stronger. The Krell's future grew darker. The Krell High Command gathered in their hive palace. Thousands of insectoid creatures clicked and hissed as they discussed what to do. "We cannot defeat them in open war," one general admitted. "Not while they stand together." "Then they must not stand together," the Hive Queen replied. Her voice was like breaking glass. "Separate them. Destroy the Valorants. Break the human spirit." "How?" The Queen's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among her kind. "We will use the Concord. We will turn their own allies against them. The galaxy is full of jealous, fearful little species. We will use their weakness." In the shadows, the Krell began to plan. They forged documents. They created lies. They whispered poison into the ears of species who resented the human Valoran alliance. And on Earth and Valora Prime, humans and Valorans continued to laugh and train and dream together. They did not know that darkness was coming. They did not know that the greatest betrayal in galactic history was about to unfold. They only knew that they were friends. They only knew that they trusted each other completely. They did not know that trust would soon be painted in blood. The stars went quiet. Where human ships had once traveled freely, there was now nothing. Where human voices had filled communication channels, there was only silence. The Sol system became a wall of darkness at the edge of known space. Automated defense. Platforms ringed the solar system like a crown of thorns. Any ship that approached was destroyed without warning. Any signal that tried to enter was blocked. Earth had locked its doors and thrown away the key. The galaxy watched with confusion at first, then with relief. Then with mockery, the Krell hegemony celebrated their victory. They had removed two threats at once. The Valorans were dead, and the humans were hiding. Krell expansion continued without resistance. Star after star fell under their shadow. The humans were never a real threat, the Hive Queen announced to her empire. They were like all young species, loud and foolish. Now they hide in their corner of space, licking their wounds. They will never come out again. The Galactic Concord returned to its normal business. Some species felt guilty about what had happened, but guilt faded with time. After 10 years, no one talked about the Valorans anymore. After 30 years, their name was barely remembered. After 50 years, they became a footnote in history books. The humans and Valorans were too aggressive, historians wrote. Their removal brought stability to the Orion Arm. 100 years passed. The galaxy forgot about Earth. But behind the silent border, humanity was not hiding. Humanity was transforming. Every piece of alien technology that humans had ever received was studied and improved. Scientists worked day and night, year after year. They did not rest. They could not rest. Every time they felt tired, they thought of Valora Prime burning. And they went back to work. The Tanaka Drive was completed in the 32nd year. It was named after Admiral Yuki Tanaka, who had died at the age of 94, still waiting for the day of return. The drive was faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships equipped with it could cross star systems in hours instead of days. Weapons technology advanced beyond anything known. Human engineers created singularity torpedoes that could crush enemy ships into points of infinite density. They built quantum disruptors that could tear molecules apart at a distance. They designed planet crackers that could shatter worlds. Though humanity swore never to use them against civilians, the humans who built these weapons did not enjoy their work. But they remembered what had been done to those they loved, and they continued. The military grew from 200 ships to 15,000. New shipyards orbited every planet in the Sol system. Factories on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter worked constantly. The hammer of industry rang through human space without pause. New ship classes were designed. The massive Kethvaran-class dreadnoughts, named after the fallen warlord, were as large as cities. The Valorous children carrier groups could launch thousands of fighters. Remember, stealth destroyers could slip through any sensor net. But technology was not the only change. Human biology itself was rewritten. Scientists extended the human lifespan to 300 years. Those who had witnessed the massacre would live to see vengeance fulfilled. Genetic modification made humans stronger, faster, and harder to kill. Cybernetic enhancements connected soldiers directly to their ships. The new human soldier was a terrifying thing. Their reflexes were instant. Their aim was perfect. Their will was iron. They trained from childhood, and they never stopped training. Every human child learned the truth about the galaxy. They saw the recordings that Admiral Tanaka had made. They heard the screams of dying Valorans. They watched cities burn and children cry. And they learned to hate, but it was not blind hatred. The humans were careful about that. They did not hate all aliens. They did not want to become monsters themselves. They hated only those who deserved hatred. The murderers, the betrayers, the cowards who had watched and done nothing. The Valoran language became humanity's second tongue. Every school taught it. Every government document was printed in both languages. The humans refused to let their friends' culture die. Museums preserved Valoran art and music. Theaters performed Valoran plays. Libraries held Valoran poetry. The Silver People lived on in human memory, kept alive by human love. A new holiday was created, Remembrance Day. Every year, all of humanity paused. Factories stopped. Ships went quiet. People gathered in public squares and listened as the names of Valoran cities were read aloud. 8 billion names would have taken too long, so they recited the cities instead. Each name was followed by a moment of silence. Then everyone spoke together. We remember. We will return. We will repay. This promise had a name. They called it Kethvaran's Promise. Not all Valorans had died in the massacre. A few thousand had been away from their homeworld when the attack came. When they learned what had happened, they fled to the only place they could trust, Earth. They arrived just before the borders closed. 9,812 Valorans. All that remained of a civilization that had once numbered in the billions. Humanity welcomed them with open arms and breaking hearts. The survivors were given homes, citizenship, and respect. They became honored advisors, helping humans understand Valoran culture and military tactics. One survivor was more important than all the others. Her name was Resathan, and she was Warlord Kethvaran's daughter. She had been on a diplomatic mission when her world died. For weeks afterward, she could not speak. She could not eat. She simply sat and stared at nothing. Lost in grief too deep for tears, then Admiral Tanaka came to see her. The old human warriors sat beside the young Valoran for a long time without speaking. Finally, she took Resathan's hand. "Your father was my brother," Tanaka said quietly. "I loved him like family, and I made him a promise. I will return with fire. I will avenge your people." Resathan looked at her with empty eyes. How? You are few. They are many. We will become more than few. We will become a storm, a flood, an unstoppable force. Tanaka's grip tightened. Your father believed in humanity. He saw what we could become. Help me prove him right. Help me prepare the army that will avenge the Valorans. Something flickered in Risathin's eyes. The emptiness began to fill with fire. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will teach your soldiers everything my people knew. I will make them warriors worthy of my father's memory. For the next 80 years, Risathin trained human commanders in Valoran combat doctrine. She was harsh. She was demanding. She accepted nothing less than perfection. Many students broke under her training. Those who survived became the greatest warriors humanity had ever produced. When the borders finally prepared to open, Risathin was 180 years old. Her silver skin had dulled with age. Her movements were slower than they had been, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept her alive for a century. She stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Flame and watched as 15,000 human warships formed up around her. It is time, she said to herself. At last, my father. At last. The silent century was ending. The door was about to open, and the galaxy would learn what happens when humanity makes a promise. The Krell exploration ship drifted toward the Sol system on a routine patrol. Its captain was young and bored. Everyone knew that the human border was dead space. Nothing had come out in 100 years. Nothing ever would. His crew was barely paying attention to their instruments when the readings changed. Suddenly, there were contacts everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. The captain stared at his screen in disbelief. Where there should have been empty space, there was now a wall of metal and weapons. Ships larger than anything the Krell had ever built. Ships that gleamed silver and black, marked with strange symbols. One symbol was on every ship. 2 hands clasped together. Human and Valoran. A communication channel opened. A human woman appeared on the screen. She wore a crisp military uniform. Her eyes were dark and calm and absolutely merciless. I am Admiral Chum Tanaka of the United Earth Defense Force, she said. Her voice carried across the void like a blade. I am the great-granddaughter of Yuki Tanaka, who watched your masters murder 8 billion of our friends. The Krell captain tried to speak, but his throat had gone dry. Humanity remembers, the Admiral continued. Tell your masters this. We are coming. Tell them to prepare. Tell them to pray to whatever gods insects worship. Because when we arrive, there will be no mercy. There will only be justice. She paused. Her lips curved into something that was almost a smile, but far too cold. Now go. Run home. Deliver the message. We are giving you this chance only because we want them to know fear before the end. The Krell ship turned and fled at maximum speed. Its captain was screaming orders, demanding faster engines, more power. His crew obeyed, but their hands were shaking. They had looked into human eyes. They had seen what waited there, and they were terrified. The message reached Krell Prime within days. The Hive Queen listened to the recording with growing disbelief. This is impossible, she declared. The humans were weak. They ran away. How can they have such a fleet? They were not running, Majesty, one of her advisors said carefully. They were preparing. The Queen's mandibles clicked in anger. Preparing for what? We are the mightiest empire in the galaxy. We have 4,000 ships. Let them come. We will crush them as we crushed their Valoran pets. But other voices were not so confident. Old generals who had studied human history spoke of a species that never forgot an insult. Historians warned that humans were most dangerous when they were quiet. Spies reported that the human fleet numbered at least 15,000 ships, all equipped with technology no one had ever seen. The Galactic Concord called an emergency meeting. The chamber was full of panicked species, all talking at once. "We must attack now, before they are ready," the Therian delegate shouted. "They are already ready," the Mokturi representative replied. His tentacles were trembling. "They have been ready for a century. Perhaps we should negotiate. Offer them territory, reparations. They do not want territory. They do not want money. They want blood." In the back of the chamber, smaller species watched silently. Many of them had secretly regretted the Valoran massacre. Some had tried to help refugees escape. They remembered how the Krell and their allies had laughed at human grief. Now they reached out to Earth through hidden channels. They offered intelligence about Krell defenses. They provided maps of enemy territory. They promised to stay neutral in the coming war. Humanity accepted the intelligence. But when these species asked to join the human alliance, the answer was always the same. "We trusted the galaxy once. We will not trust again. Thank you for your help. But when the war comes, stay out of our way." The human fleet emerged from Sol like a tide of destruction. They did not strike the Krell first. That would come later. First, there was other business to handle. The Therian homeworld saw them coming. 100 human dreadnoughts appeared in their sky, blocking out the sun. The Therians scrambled their defensive fleet, but it was laughable. 50 outdated warships against the iron fist of humanity. Admiral Chun Tanaka broadcast her demands. "We want every military commander who participated in the Valoran massacre. We have their names. We have recorded their orders. Surrender them for trial, or face the consequences." The Therian government refused. They thought they could outlast a siege. They thought humans would eventually get bored and leave. 6 months later, the Therian economy had collapsed. Their people were starving. Their military had deserted. The government surrendered unconditionally. The war criminals were handed over. 64 Therian officers who had helped murder billions. They were taken to Valora Prime to stand trial before human judges and Valoran witnesses. They were found guilty. They were executed. The Mokturi watched what happened to the Therians and tried to run. Their entire species loaded onto ships and fled toward the Galactic Rim. They did not get far. Human stealth destroyers had been waiting for exactly this. The Mokturi fleet was surrounded before they reached open space. Their weapons were disabled. Their leaders were arrested. Their military infrastructure was dismantled piece by piece. The Galactic Concord watched these events with growing horror. Some members called for united action against humanity. Others pointed out that any fleet sent against humans was simply throwing ships away. In the end, they did nothing. They just watched as humanity passed through their space like ghosts. Human fleets ignored Concord ships entirely. They did not ask permission. They did not acknowledge communications. They simply went where they wanted. The message was clear. You are irrelevant. You always were. You stood by while our friends died, and now we do not even see you. This was somehow worse than being attacked. To be so completely dismissed. To be treated like insects beneath notice. Finally, the human fleet gathered at the edge of Krell space. 12,000 ships, gleaming in the light of foreign stars. Every one of them carried the symbol of 2 clasped hands. Every one of them was crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Admiral Chun Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship. Beside her, old warlord Rizathan looked out at the enemy territory that waited ahead. "They still do not believe," Tanaka said quietly. "They still think they can win." Rizathan made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They have never faced true human anger. They killed from a distance, safely, like cowards. They've never seen what happens when humanity fights close. Are you ready? The ancient Valoran straightened. Despite her age, there was nothing weak about her. She was her father's daughter. She would see this through. I have been ready for 100 years, she replied. Let us begin. Tanaka nodded. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Tanaka. The enemy is ahead. They murdered 8 billion of our family. They laughed while innocents screamed. They thought we would forget. Her voice hardened to steel. We did not forget. Today we begin the repayment. Today we honor Kethvoran's promise. Today we return with fire. Across 12,000 ships, 100,000 human voices answered as one, with fire. The fleet moved forward into enemy space. The final war had begun. The human fleet arrived at Valoran Prime like a storm made of steel. 100 years ago, this had been a paradise. Silver cities had reached toward the sky. Gardens had bloomed in every district. Children had played in streets paved with crystal. Now it was a tomb. The Krell had turned the dead world into a fortress. Military bases covered the graves of billions. Weapons platforms stood where temples had once touched the clouds. The murderers had built their war machines on top of their victims. Admiral Chun Tanaka looked at the desecrated world through the viewscreen of her flagship, the Eternal Flame. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were clenched. How many ships do they have? She asked. 1,800 capital ships, her tactical officer replied. Plus support craft. They have been reinforcing this position for decades. And we have 12,000. Tanaka allowed herself a small, cold smile. Almost fair. Old warlord Resistance stepped forward. Her ancient body moved slowly, but her eyes were sharp with pain and fury. She stared at the world that had once been her home. The world where her father had died. Tanaka turned to her. Warlord, this is your world. This battle belongs to you. Give the order. Resithin was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was surprisingly steady. All ships, cleanse my home. Destroy every structure the Krell have built. Leave nothing standing that was raised by their hands. She paused. But protect the ancient ruins. Protect what remains of my people's legacy. Fight with precision. Fight with honor. Make my father proud. The order went out. 12,000 ships surged forward. The Krell met them with everything they had. 1,800 warships formed a wall between humanity and Valoran Prime. Their weapons fired in waves of destruction. Their commanders screamed orders with desperate fury. It did not matter. Human ships moved like dancers. The Tanaka drive made them faster than anything the Krell had ever faced. Singularity torpedoes tore through Krell shields like paper. Quantum disruptors shredded armor plating. Human pilots flew circles around their enemies. The Krell fought hard. They were insects, but they were not cowards. They died at their posts, still firing, still trying to win. But technology and training and a century of burning hatred were too much. The battle lasted 11 hours. When it was over, every Krell ship was destroyed or disabled. The orbital platforms were slag. The military bases on the surface were craters. Not a single Krell installation remained intact, but the ancient Valoran ruins still stood. Human gunners had targeted with incredible precision. They destroyed the new while preserving the old. The graves of billions remained undisturbed. It cost humanity 2,400 ships. Nearly 30,000 soldiers died. Admiral Tanaka felt each loss like a wound. But she did not hesitate. This was the price. This had always been the price. Resithin wept as shuttles descended to the surface. Human soldiers stepped onto Valoran soil for the first time. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They knelt in the ash that had once been cities and paid their respects to the dead. But the war was not over. The Krell homeworld still stood. The human fleet moved through Krell space like fire through dry grass. System after system fell. Every military target was destroyed without mercy. Every Krell warship that challenged them was eliminated. The Krell fought back with increasing desperation. They tried ambush. They tried traps. They threw everything they had at the human advance. Nothing worked. Human soldiers were faster, stronger, and harder to kill than any enemy the Krell had ever faced. But more than that, they were fighting for something real. Every human remembered why they were there. Every human carried the names of dead Valorans in their hearts. The Krell were fighting for conquest. The humans were fighting for justice. It was no contest. When the human fleet finally arrived at Krell Prime, the Hive Queen offered to negotiate. She appeared on all communication channels. Her insectoid face twisted into what she thought was a humble expression. "Mighty humans," she said, "we understand your anger. We offer you everything. Territory, resources, slaves. Name your price, and we will pay it. Only spare our homeworld." Admiral Tanaka's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "The Valorans cannot accept your apology. They are dead. They cannot be bought. They cannot be bargained with. They can only be avenged." She cut the channel. The fleet moved forward. But what happened next was not what the galaxy expected. There was no bombardment of Krell Prime, no genocide, no extinction. Humanity had not spent a century preparing to become the monsters they hated. Instead, human ships descended in precise waves. Military installations were destroyed. Weapons factories were demolished. But civilian areas were left untouched. Human soldiers landed in the capital city. They marched past terrified Krell citizens who had expected death. The soldiers did not even look at them. They had no interest in ordinary people. They wanted only the guilty. The Hive Queen was arrested in her throne room. Her entire ruling council was taken into custody. Every general, every admiral, every officer who had participated in the Valoran massacre was identified and captured. They were transported to Valoran Prime. There, in the ruins of the civilization they had destroyed, they stood trial. The trials lasted months. Evidence was presented. Witnesses spoke. Valoran survivors told their stories. The galaxy watched as justice was done. Real justice, not revenge. Every defendant was found guilty. Some were executed. Others were sentenced to spend their remaining lives restoring what they had destroyed. None escaped. The Krell hegemony was finished. Their military was dismantled completely. They were forbidden from building warships for 1,000 years. Human observers would ensure they obeyed. And then, humanity did something unexpected. They offered nothing. No alliance. No federation. No new galactic concord. The old order was dead, and humanity did not intend to replace it. Instead, Admiral Tanaka broadcast a simple message to every species in the galaxy. "We did not come here for power. We came for justice. That justice is now complete. We will return to our space. We will not interfere with your affairs. Build your governments. Make your alliances. Live your lives." She paused. "But know this. Any species that preys upon the innocent will answer to Earth. Any civilization that commits genocide will face us. We are watching. We are waiting. And we will never forget." The fleet began its journey home. But before they left Valoran Prime, one final task remained. On the spot where the capital city of Cathalarian had once stood, human engineers built a monument. It was a statue of two figures, a human and a Valoran, hands clasped together, facing the stars. At the base, an inscription was carved in both languages. Here stood the Valorans, warriors, poets, friends. They were murdered by cowardice and greed. They are remembered by humanity. They are avenged by humanity. They will never be forgotten. Rezathin was 185 years old when she placed the first flowers at the monument's base. Her silver skin was pale with age. Her steps were slow and careful, but her eyes still burned with the fire that had sustained her for a century. Admiral Tanaka stood beside her. They looked at the monument together in silence. "Is it enough?" Tanaka finally asked. Rezathin did not answer immediately. She looked up at the stars. Stars her people had once sailed. Stars their children might sail again someday. Carried on human ships, protected by human loyalty. "Nothing will bring them back," she said at last. "Nothing can undo what was done. But this," she gestured at the monument, at the human soldiers standing guard, at the fleet overhead. "This is what my father saw in you. Not your weapons, not your ships. Your memory, your loyalty, your refusal to forget those you love." She turned to face the Admiral. A single tear ran down her silver cheek. "Yes," she said softly. "It is enough." The sun set over Valora Prime. Human and Valoran stood together at the grave of a civilization, bound by grief and love and a promise that had been kept. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some species could be broken. Some species could be conquered. Some species would forget their dead and move on. But humanity was not like other species. Humanity remembered. Humanity returned. And humanity kept its promises. Always.